Hello, Pickle Peeps. I hope you guys are having an amazing day, night, afternoon, or whatever it is where you are. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me. Today, we're going to be talking about two novels that I read. I wanted to do one for each, but they were just bleeding into each other. So we're going to do one video for both. That is Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs. These books introduce one of my favorite fictional characters, which is Hannibal Lecter. And obviously, I'm wearing my Silence of the Lambs t-shirt. You guys can see. Lovely. Got it from Cavity Colors. And this is great. I was really excited. I watched these movies a lot when I was younger, mostly Silence of the Lambs. I didn't watch Red Dragon as much, but it was very good to read and listen to the books. And knowing the movies as well as I do, I was very surprised that the books stayed, like, the movies were really close to the books. There was a few changes, obviously, and we'll go over those. We'll also go over mainly just the books. I'm going to try not to bring the movies too much into it, but I can't. Those were my first introduction. I will try my best, but no promises. So the first book we're going to be talking about today is Red Dragon, which was published in 1981, and it was written by Thomas Harris. He also wrote Silence of the Lambs, and that was published in 1988. These books were the first two books that we're adding to our brand new reading journal, which we set up in the last video we did for this. And we're adding the sticker for the book cover for Red Dragon. I did listen to this on an audiobook, but I do have the physical copy, so we're able to mark it off of our physical copy list, which is at the front of the journal. And I really enjoy this thermal printer paper that I got with my thermal printer because it is see-through. That, I don't know why, but that makes me so excited and happy with it. So we're putting these down, and there's a difference between the two on how we're trying to do these entries, and that was a lot. We're just going to be going through trial and error. I haven't decided on how we're going to go through, like, colors, if we're going to be alternating colors, if it's going to be one color per month that we have our reading completed in. I don't know. We're just going to kind of figure this out as we go, and we'll be letting you guys know. And what I do like about this journal is it's a dot grid, and before I started doing these type of journals, or any type of journaling really, I did not know how much I really enjoy a dot grid. Apparently, that's my jam. But this book, we're starting off pretty true to the original reading journal we had. We're going with an orange. We read this in November, so I do a little star so I can easily recognize where it starts, which didn't really need them since we're starting these reviews with book covers right next to them, but I kind of like the little stars, so we're going to keep the little stars. We're putting in the title, the author, the format we consume the material in. It could be a physical book, an ebook, an audiobook, however we're reading. This one, like I said, I listened to on audio. I was able to check it out through my local library and use it through the Libby app. And I was really surprised. Like, the physical book seems a little chunky, even though it's smaller, but the audiobook was only 3 hours. I was like, that is not a long time at all. And we started this on November 16th, 2023, and we finished it on the 24th of November. And these aren't actual listening times. I was only able to listen to the book when I had time between those dates, and I didn't have an actual date. Those were the times I got out of my Libby app because I wasn't keeping track until, like, the third book that we started putting in our reading journal. But we're getting better at it, and I'm trying to get better at inputting our times that we're reading every day into Storygraph. So right now we have 2 books we're reading, and I'm trying to do better on getting those into Storygraph. It's it's a process. It's a process. These are all new habits that we're learning here. And for the entry that we did in here, I was trying to go through the compile system, which is how I'm rating the books in here. And in the original reading journal, I only had, I think, like 3 lines for this entry, but gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So in this new reading journal, I was trying to be a little bit different with it, and I started listing it by the compile, so character, atmosphere, writing. You can read it all right there. So what it is, if you guys have not read the book, heard the story, watched the movie, or anything like that, there will be spoilers in this video for both Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs. And what I really liked was the differences between Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs. It was in relation to Hannibal Lecter. Like, it was great, which is one of the most surprising things to me. And I knew this going into reading the book, but the book's really highlighted how different and how crazy this character is. In the first book, Hannibal Lecter's only on page for about 12 pages at most. He's only in there for a few scenes. And what it is there's a serial killer. They call him the Tooth Fairy, and he is killing families throughout a large area. The FBI is called in. Jack Crawford, which is the head of behavioral science unit, is trying to do a profile and catch this serial killer, but he needs help. He's not able to do it. So he calls in William Graham, which is a detective that he worked with in the past. This is the detective that originally caught Hannibal Lecter. And he's trying to get him back in to help him out, try to profile the Tooth Fairy, trying to get him to, help out so they can catch the Tooth Fairy. And Graham doesn't want to. Graham really, really doesn't want to. He is physically scarred, I think on his face from Hannibal Lecter, and he retired right after the whole incident. And it was a big thing. The way he caught Hannibal Lecter was he was working with Hannibal Lecter while trying to profile, I think it's the Chesapeake Ripper is what he was called. He was trying to profile the Chesapeake Ripper and catch him, not realizing that was Hannibal Lecter. And he just happened to see an old medical text when he was last talking to Hannibal, and all the pieces started clicking in. However, Lecter realizes that he figured him out and attacked him. And then while he attacked him, Will fought back. They were both very injured. They both passed out and were unconscious while the police arrived. Took Hannibal Lecter, everything. They did trial. He was sent to an asylum. Will, after that, left. He decided, I'm retiring. I'm done. And he moved, and so he was just trying to live his life. And now he's being pulled back by Jack Crawford to profile the Tooth Fairy, which seems right up Graham's alley. Like, Graham has this insight. He has a way of empathizing and getting into the headspace of these killers and being able to catch them using that insight. So obviously Crawford's like, I need this person. I need him to help. And he doesn't want to, but he reluctantly goes because Crawford's promising, like, you don't have to do anything. You're not going to be in harm. I just need you to help, just visit the crime scenes. Let's see if you see something that we didn't. So he visits these crime scenes, and he starts picking up on little things that some of them Crawford got, some of them they didn't. And so he's trying to do this. He's trying to figure out how to catch this guy. And as he's getting pulled deeper into the case, he realizes that he needs to go see Hannibal Lecter in the asylum. He needs to be able to talk with him, to communicate with him, to try and get back into that headspace that he kind of promised himself he wouldn't ever have to do again. He was retired. He didn't have to. Like, he wasn't dealing with this mess anymore. But because he pulled back, he's like, I have to go talk to Lecter. So he goes to the asylum and he talks to Lecter. And Lecter's kind of doing the same thing that he did with Clarice in Silence of the Lambs, where he's just like, give me the case file and I'll help you type thing. Like, what the books highlight that I think they should have been left into the movies. I don't know if it would have made it better. I think it would have been great. Is how sarcastic Hannibal Lecter is talking to just about anybody. Just about anybody. He makes fun of them, but he's so sarcastic about it that a lot of the times it just kind of doesn't even highlight it or anything, but I caught it and I was just like, that's funny. Like, it's messed up, but it's funny. And so he visits Lecter, and Lecter's like messing with him a little bit, but Graham's not trying to ask for his help. Like, he's not trying to do that anymore. He's just trying to get back into that headspace. So he meets him. He's like, okay, getting kind of back into it. I understand now, you know, Lecter's bringing up all of those, the way he used to see things. And when he's coming out of the asylum, we have this skeezy reporter guy, Lowndes, who sees him. He's the guy who took pictures of him in the hospital. You know, he's a tabloid writer, kind of like an ambulance chaser type guy. He writes these articles for the tabloid and everything, and he sees him there, and he's trying to insert himself into the investigation so he can have a story. And Graham doesn't like it, Crawford doesn't like it, but they're kind of like, we can kind of use this, but not really. They're trying to like get him away from there. And on the other side of this, which is really great, I really enjoy this about this book on how it flips. Like, you see the law enforcement side, you see Graham, you see Crawford, you see the steps they are taking to further the investigation, which are very logical steps to further an investigation. And then on the other side of it, you see Francis Dollarhide, who is the Tooth Fairy. You get to see his background as he was severely abused as a child, and he was with his grandmother who was slowly losing her mind, and he was raised in this old retirement home that she ran until she wasn't mentally there anymore, so they had to shut it down. But he still lived with her throughout all of this. So you see how he was abused as a child through that. And, you know, he has a disfigurement. He had I think, a cleft palate. So he had surgery on that, except he's still horribly scarred. And that was one of the things that was different in the movies, is the book, he's middle-aged, a little bit older, and he's just horribly scarred, while he's like super muscularly jacked. And he works in this photo processing like facility, and he, while going into like a psychosis based on the trauma that he had as a child, he sees a painting called The Red Dragon, and that manifests as a voice in his head that's pushing him to do these killings. Like, these killings are sacrifices for the Red Dragon. They're very ritualistic. It's like, this is a whole thing for him. And so that's why he's doing that. He's finding his victims by the home videos that they're sending through the processing center. Like, he brings home tapes, he looks at them, he finds a family, and he kind of just waits for the Red Dragon in his head to be like, that one. And then he studies more tapes to find out more about the family, to prepare to go and attack them. And he attacks every full moon. So the FBI and everybody who's chasing him has a very good idea on when the next attack will be, and that's why Crawford pulled in Graham, because he's like, we're running out of time. We need your help. So the Red Dragon is doing that, and then while he found his next victims, and he's trying to gather as much information as he can about that, he meets Reba. Reba is a coworker of his who works in the same facility, but he's never actually met her. And while he's working on his regular job, he meets her and they strike up a conversation. And he realizes she's blind, which for Francis is a big plus because it's like he's horribly disfigured in his head. He's more disfigured than he is like physically. So her not being able to see him is just, it's refreshing for him. And so she's not scared of him. She can't see him, and she starts talking to him like a regular person. And she's flirting more with him because he doesn't seem to know what to do with the flirting. And she kind of pursues him. And so they go out on a date. And when he brings her to his house, you know, they have sex, and she's really into him. And while in the morning, she wanders around the gardens of his house because it's a huge mansion. And she can't see the decrepitness of it as she's going through it. She also can't see all of the dangerous things he has in there and all of the stuff that would point to, hey, this guy's super creepy and is doing something and you should run. So she can't see any of that. She's just wandering around. She's going out to the gardens. And while she's out in the gardens, the red dragon is talking to Francis. And he's saying that he wants her. And so Francis is freaking out because he likes Reba. He connects with Reba. He's really enjoying her company. He's really thinking that he could have a life with her. So he's arguing with himself. Well, him and the red dragon are arguing, and he's like, no, you can't have her. And so during this, like after this, him and Reba get into this argument. He's trying to kind of push her away. He's scared for her well-being. And so they kind of break up, and he like really pushes her away. And she's kind of she's confused because she's like, I thought you liked me. And he pushes her away. And while they're on this little break, this little breakup that they have, he travels to New York to actually go to where the painting is. He goes to where the painting is and he eats it to try and get rid of the red dragon. And he thinks it's working. He's like, okay, this is working. I can be happy with Reba. But then he's like, but if the red dragon shows back up, or if that did not kill him completely, I have a backup plan. I have a family that I can sacrifice instead of Reba. So he's super excited. He's ready to go back to Reba and be like, all right, let's try this. Let's make this work. And while he's doing this part, we're flipping back and forth. We're flipping back and forth through his POV and Graham's POV. And on the other side, Graham has been doing some solid detective work, and they're doing the investigation. And after he has talked with Lecter, he's getting more into the mindset of what this person is doing, what they're thinking, how they're gonna go further their goals. And Lowndes comes into this because they're gonna use him as bait, because they found out that after Graham went to go see Lecter for the first time, Lowndes writes it in his tabloid, and he's like, oh, is there a big collaboration? He's going to help catch the Tooth Fairy type thing. They find out that Francis has been sending correspondence letters to Lecter, and they find these letters. They try and get as much information as they can from it. And they use Lowndes to write just a skeezy article about the Tooth Fairy and all of these wrong things about his background and his psychology. So they use Lowndes to write this to try and pull the Tooth Fairy, draw the Tooth Fairy out. So Graham and Crawford are trying to figure out how to get the Tooth Fairy to come out and try and catch him. And Lowndes ends up getting kidnapped by Francis. And Francis shows him who he is, explains to him who he is, explains to him who the Red Dragon is, shows him his victims, and glues him to a wheelchair, an old wheelchair, sets him on fire, and pushes him into the building, that the parking garage of the building where he works. Like, that's where his tabloid is. And he survives. He's found in time that they're able to take him to the hospital. He tells Graham and Crawford everything he knows about this guy, and they're able to piece together that, you know, he's using these home films based on what Lowndes told them and what they were finding out already, that's how he's choosing his victims. So they start going around to all of these, just doing like their due diligence with this whole video processing center. And they go there, they're talking to Francis's boss, and he's kind of ticking off like, this is the type of person we're looking for. And the boss and a lot of the coworkers are like, oh, that sounds like Francis. So they have a name. Francis sees Crawford and Graham at his job, starts freaking out, leaves to go and find Reba, but he went to the whole place in the first place to see if Reba was there. He's been calling her and she's not picking up. So he's kind of freaking out to see where she is. He's going to tell her, you know, we can make this work. This is his whole plan. So he goes to where her apartment is, where he sees that she is finishing up on a date with a skeezy coworker that was introduced previously. And just from the way the descriptions and how they're talking about this coworker, you get the ick. You get the ick from him. Like, if you were in this poor woman's shoes, you'd just be like, ugh. Like, I need to call HR, maybe the police, kind of, from this guy. So he was badgering her at work. You know, he kept telling me, you got to stay away from Francis. He's a bad guy. I feel bad. There's got a bad feeling about this. You got to stay away from him. Let me take you to dinner. Let me take you. Like, he badgered her into going to dinner with him. So she went to dinner with him, hoping to be like, I'm going to go to dinner with you, and then hopefully you'll just leave me alone. Just leave me alone. And then after that, he's dropping her off at her apartment, and he's kind of badgering her to come. He wants to come into her apartment. She's like, no. So she gives him a kiss to be like, good night. This is it. This is like a good night kiss. Bye-bye. And again, she's hoping that, you know, this will make him leave her alone. And unfortunately, this is what Francis sees. Is he can't hear what she's saying, can't hear what they're saying. I don't think he would even understand the context of what was going on, because he's really socially awkward. And so he sees her give this guy a kiss, and that's when he's just like, snaps. So he knocks out the coworker, kidnaps Reba, takes her back to his house. But while she is knocked out and unconscious, he goes to this gas station that he frequents pretty regularly. And there's a guy there who's about his size and has no teeth. So Francis kills him and takes his body back to his house. And what he does is, well, Reba wakes up, he's pretty much being like, how could you? I was trying to save you. I cared about you. And she's trying to explain to him, like, this is what was going on. It's like, I don't care about this guy. She's like, I wanted to be with you. And, well, every time she thinks she's kind of placating him, she darts for the door. She's trying to run away. She's trying to get away. And then he catches her, brings her back. And then she's like, I'm sorry. And, you know, she's trying to do the best in the situation that she's in. And so he's saying that he's going to pretty much unalive himself so she can be safe. And so she's standing there, like, trying to calm everything down, trying to figure out what's going on, and trying to get out of there alive. She hears a gunshot. There's like blood splattered on her face. She starts freaking out. And then she goes down on the floor and tries to feel for what's going on. She feels blood. She feels like the guy's head is, like, half of it is missing. She's freaking out. And then she gets up and tries to remember where she's at and leaves. And by this time, Crawford and Graham, they already have this guy's name. They have his address. They're on their way to his house. And they're like trying to get there. They get there and they see Reba coming down like the lawn. They run to her, and as they're trying to figure out what's going on, and she's like, he killed himself, like he shot himself, and she's like, he's dead, he's super dead. And they're like, are you sure? How do you know? And she's like, I felt it. And she shows them like her hands. By the time they calm her down, they're trying to go into the house. It explodes. It blows up, like the whole house just like a Michael Bay movie. Gone. And so Graham is like, Crawford and Graham are like, all right, well, I guess that's it. Graham goes back to his hotel. They find out that there's a corpse in there, and that corpse has teeth in there that match the teeth marks on the bodies that they have. And they're like, all right, well, Graham's like, we're done. We did the job. Okay, so he goes back to his home, where I think it's in Florida, where his wife and her daughter, or her son live. His also name is Will. So he goes back there. They're trying to catch up on all the things that he's missed. He's telling her that there's nice family reunion type thing. They go fishing, they go boating, they're out on this pier hanging out. And they send Will to go into the house. The son. They send him to go into the house to get, I guess, stuff for s'mores or something. And, Will is there. And then his wife's like, oh, well, let me go check on him. It's been a minute. Will is there. And then when he's sitting there, he sees Francis. And Francis has a knife, and he attacks Will. And he gets him in the abdomen, he gets him on the chest, like he's just fully attacking him. And Will's trying to fight back, but he's unarmed, and he's already been hurt. So his wife, Molly, grabs a fishing pole and starts beating Francis with a fishing pole. And it was a fishing pole that they've gone fishing with, so it has a hook on it, and the hook gets into Francis's skin, and so it starts pulling at his skin while she's beating him with it. And while he's trying to go back to like fight her off, still attack Will tells her to run, get to the house, run. So she drops the fishing pole. She starts running to the house because that's also where her son is at. And Will is trying to still hold on to Francis or something to keep him from getting to his family. But he's bleeding out, and Francis runs towards Molly and tries to get her. And then you hear gunshots. Like, Will hears gunshots, and it turns out that Molly shot Francis and killed him. And then it ends up with Will on the pier. He's bleeding out. They're able to call 911. So the book ends with him in his The book ends with him in his hospital bed. And Crawford's there telling him that Francis put the body in there of this gas station attendant there, put in the dentures that he was using in his crimes, and blew the head up with a shotgun so Reba would think that was him, and then kind of herded her out of the house so she could leave. And then right before he was doing all of this, he also doused the house in gasoline. He had some sticks of dynamite. He explains where they get it. I can't remember right now, but he explains where he gets the dynamite. He has dynamite around, has the house doused in gasoline. So as soon as Reba is safe and Francis can see she's safe, she's down the road, you know, there's cars coming down, police are coming to get him, he leaves and blows up the house. And then Dr. Lecter told him where Graham lives, like as a part of the correspondence. He told him where he lives. He told him, you know, kill him. And so that's when Francis makes his way to Will's house, where his family is. And so that's how he was able to attack him. And so all of this at the end is just kind of catching up on all of these little things. And there's a lot of stuff that I told you in the plot that were found out in the last little bit. But that's how the story just kind of goes. And it ends with Will knowing that Molly's about to leave him. Like, she can't take this anymore, and he is horribly disfigured now from both what Hannibal Lecter did to him and also now what the Tooth Fairy did to him. And it ends really pretty depressingly with, you pretty much know that Will's going to become an alcoholic and that, you know, his marriage is not going to last. So he's just like a shell of a broken person. And that is one of the things where I think the movie did a little bit better. Now, the ending in the book is very realistic, but the movie is just a little bit happier. The end of the movie, Will is on a boat. He's got his family there. He reads a letter that Dr. Lecter sends him, and he like crumples it up, throws it into the ocean. They're sailing off into the sunset. They're going to be all right. But in the book, he's in a hospital bed. He wants a drink. He knows his wife is going to leave him. She can't even look at him. The letter that Dr. Lecter wrote him doesn't even make it to him because Crawford intercepts it and destroys it. So Will never knows that there was a letter. And that was the first book. That was when Hannibal Lecter was introduced to everybody. And now he's this huge pop culture icon, which is crazy. But he's in the first book, he's only in there for a few pages. It's when Will was talking to him in the first place. It was flashbacks a little bit from when he was arrested and then when the correspondences were found in his cell. Those were kind of the only times you saw Hannibal Lecter. The second book, which is Silence of the Lambs, and that was the first movie. No, wait. The first movie that was made with Hannibal Lecter, and it was Manhunter, which was in 1986. And that one is Red Dragon. And they're both different. That one took a lot more liberties away from the book. Still a pretty good movie. And then Silence of the Lambs came out in 1991, but that's where, because it was so focused on Hannibal Lecter, it was a big thing. Like, that's the movie that a lot of people know where Hannibal Lecter is, you know, the fava beans and the bottle of Chianti type stuff, which he doesn't even say in the book. He does bring up the fava beans, but he used a different wine that matches more with those type of beans than Chianti. I don't remember what it is right now, but I remember that tripped me out when it was in there. I was like, for such a famous line, I thought it came from the book. It did not. But Silence of the Lambs focuses around another killer, which is called Buffalo Bill, who is kidnapping young women, young, heavier women, and they're being found, and the FBI is being brought in on it. It's also Jack Crawford, and he brings in a trainee, Clarice Starling. She ran a double major. A difference from the movie and the book is she didn't major in psychology. She majored in forensics as well as criminology. So Silence of the Lambs focuses around her, Hannibal Lecter, and then her catching Buffalo Bill. And in this book, Hannibal Lecter plays a significant role in the whole movie. In the whole movie and the whole book. And it's almost like half of the movie is word for word, shot for shot what it's coming into the book. Big difference between Clarice in the movies and in the books is Clarice Starling's backstory is different. In the movie, her dad was, like a police officer. He worked with the sheriff. She says he was a marshal. And her backstory is he was killed and she was sent to live with family members in Montana. And, she ran away from there, and from there she went to live kind of like at an orphanage. She never saw them again. In the book, she says her father was a marshal, except he was a nighttime security guard, but Night Marshal was his title. So he was killed, and Clarice's mother could not afford all of her children. It doesn't say how many children she had. It just said that she could not afford to keep all of her children. So she sent some of them to live with family. And Clarice was one of those that she went to go live with family members in that ranch. And that ranch had horses and lambs that, would slaughter the lambs, and it would send the horses to go make glue. Like, these were all mostly like lame horses. But when she got there, she got to have a horse that she could ride on that was still rideable. And so she got really attached to it. And that's kind of her backstory with it. But when she runs away with the horse. And she does run away. They don't find her. She goes to this orphanage type place, and they just let her stay there. And that's where she grows up. Like, it's a big difference from the book to the movie, that you're just like, they both amount to the same thing, but it adds a lot of differences in her character, and it makes more sense on why she makes the decisions that she does in the book. But the basic plot line, if you haven't seen and or read Silence of the Lambs, is there's a killer who's kidnapping and killing young women, and Jack Crawford, the head of the behavioral science unit, brings in a trainee, Clarice Starling, and he's bringing her in to interview Hannibal Lecter for a program that the FBI has to kind of catalog and profile their serial killers to help create a database. And he's bringing her in because all of his resources and all of his people are on the Buffalo Bill case. So he doesn't have anybody to work on this that he can spare. But higher offices are kind of breathing down his neck to get this done. So he brings her in because he remembers her from some classes that he had, some lectures that he had, and he realizes that she'd probably be the best candidate for it. He sends her to go talk to Hannibal Lecter. She goes. Hannibal Lecter taunts her, makes fun of her, and she's just like, can you do this questionnaire for me? Can you help me out with this? And he's like, no. And there's an incident that happens at the asylum with a patient named Miggs. And Lecter finds it just repulsive. He's just like, I would never have happened I would have never have that happen to you. And the line, like, the same in the book as it is in the movie. That whole scene is just pretty much verbatim. And he tells her that he's going to, where it changes, he tells her he's going to give her a Valentine. He's going to help her advance her career, because that's what she really wants. So he gives her some information that she's not really able to decipher. She leaves, she goes back to the FBI headquarters, and she's like, all right, I need to write up my report to Jack Crawford. And she writes up her report. He reads it, and he's just like, do you see anything weird here? Like, tell me about it. She tells him what she put in her report. He gives her information that she might need, and it's regarding his last victim before he was caught. And she's like, oh, okay. And she's like, well, I would like to pursue this. So he tells her, in her own time, because she's still in training, in your own time, you can work on this. So she's working on it in her own time. You see her interactions with her fellow students. She's trying to work on it. She's exhausted. That's where it brings her to a storage unit. And Crawford guides her a lot more in the book because she's a trainee. She's new at this. She doesn't really know the ins and outs of these case files. She does not know the ins and outs of all of these things. So he's helping her, guide her through this. And so when she goes to this storage unit, she finds an old car in there. The person who had it set up, the attorney let her in, and finds an old car. There's a mannequin there. She's freaked out about it. She's like, okay, you hear her talking to herself in her head, like, calm down. You gotta do this by the book. You gotta do this systematically. You know, do your job. So she looks at it, and there's a thing on the head. It looks weird. And so she's feeling around, and she realizes it's an old, like, apothecary jar. She takes off the cover off of it, sees a severed head in there. And then she goes back to talk to Dr. Lecter to be like, this is what it is. And before she gets back, before she finds the storage unit, Crawford lets her know, while he's trying to help her figure all this out, that Miggs is dead. That they don't really know what happened. He swallowed his tongue, but they don't know why. But they very heavily say, like, it was Lecter. It was Lecter that was talking to him all night, and he swallowed his tongue. He's dead. So when she goes there again, she's talking with Lecter, trying to get him to open up more and try and get him to find out more information about this specific head and what's going on in it. And he tells her that he can help her out. He starts doing this type of play on her where she starts talking and starts asking questions. He kind of turns it around on her, starts asking her questions. He asks her about her history, asks her about all of, like, her life, what's going on with her. And so while they're talking, she realizes that he's being punished for Miggs. Like, his whole cell is completely bare. There's nothing in it. And he tells her that he can help her. Like, he keeps saying, I can help you. I can help you. Give me the case files for Buffalo Bill and I can help you. And she's like, I'm not on that case. I don't know. I can't help with that. I'm not on it. I'm working on this. And he wants to help her, but he doesn't want to. He likes playing with her, but he's also very, like, you see him getting interested in what she's going to do. And while she's talking with him and everything like that, we see that Buffalo Bill has taken another young woman. And we find out when she leaves, she writes her reports up to Crawford, letting him know what's going on. But she finds out that there's been another kidnapping. And it happens to be a senator's daughter. And she's waiting for Crawford to call her up and be like, all right, we're gonna do something here. And so she's letting everybody know, like, I'll probably be called away. So I'll let everybody know I'm here. And she's not. She's really disappointed that she's not being called away, because she's like, I thought I was going to be a part of this. And then she receives a call from Crawford's people. Because Crawford never, like, contacts her directly, but Crawford's people letting her know that there's been a body discovered. And because she has a degree in forensics, they're like, can you identify people who are found in rivers and stuff like that? She's like, yeah, I can do that. So they're like, get a kit, everything. You need to go to where this body was found, because we need somebody who can run forensics on this person. So that's when she's like, all right, cool. She signs out all of her gear, everything. She goes to where this is, and that's where she sees the body of one of the victims of Buffalo Bill. And she's kind of running the show of what goes on there. She's there, Crawford's there. You have the morgue attendants there. She's running the prints. She's doing the photos. She's just doing the forensics part of her job. And that's when they find a cocoon in the person's throat. And she doesn't really know what it is. She knows that it's kind of a cocoon, but she doesn't know why. She's asking questions like, why is this here? Did somebody place this here? Crawford doesn't know, but he's like, I have to go do things, but I have a contact at the Smithsonian who can help with this. Like, take this to the Smithsonian, identify it, let me know. Maybe something, maybe not. And she tells him that there might be a cocoon in the other head that we found in the storage unit. She's like, tell me you'll run that on this. And he was like, I'll run it if we find it something different. If it's something super common, there's no point. So she goes to the Smithsonian, meets two. One's a doctorate, one isn't. So one has a PhD, one has a master's degree, but they're both, I don't know, anthropologists? I don't know the correct word. It's in the book, I forgot. And they check to see what it is. One of them's heavily hitting on Starling, and she's kind of into it. She's like, that's cute. And that's when they find out it's a moth that's not common. You see it everywhere. If you look up Silence of the Lambs or anything, it's very common. Posters, Hannibal Lecter's head with the moth coming out of his mouth or covering his mouth. That's what they're talking about. It doesn't say that it has that like skull on the back of it, but that's where they do identify it. And she's like, all right, cool, this is not super common. I'm totally gonna tell Crawford what it is. She immediately contacts Crawford, and they're telling her Crawford's at home, we're not gonna do this right now. And she's like, I need you to tell him. And she's like, he's not, we're not contacting him right now because Crawford's wife is in the she has terminal cancer, and she's having like kind of like hospice care for her. So she's like, okay. She heads back to the FBI training area, and she's just there doing her normal type of things, bugging Crawford, saying, we should bring Lecter in on this. We should bring Lecter in on this. So far, everything he has told us is going to happen has happened with this case. And Crawford's like, he's just messing with you. Like, he would, if this one thing wasn't found, and I think the last thing was like scalping. He's like, it's a trick. If the person was scalped, he'd be like, here, see, I told you. She's like, if it wasn't scalped, he would have said he would have, but we caught him, or he stopped just in time. Like, Crawford has dealt with Lecter a lot. So he's like, he's messing with you. But she keeps bugging him and bugging him and bugging him about it. But finally, Crawford gives in. He gives in. He's like, all right, I can have you go meet Lecter and do this. And she tells him that Lecter said he'll help, but he needs an offer that Crawford won't ever give him because Crawford hates him. And Crawford tells him, I may be able to work out a deal. Go talk to him, see if it'll work, and see if he's receptive. If he's receptive, we'll see what we can do. So she goes back to meet with Lecter, and she's trying to give him like all the case files, everything. Like, she has all of this stuff ready. They're talking. He's trying to get into her head some more. That's where they bring up her past and like when her father died and how that happened. And she's bringing like dragging up these memories. They're talking about quid pro quo, and she's like, he's really receptive to this. After their meeting, she tells Crawford that yes, he wants a deal. And Crawford tells her, I can get you a deal. I have a deal. I can get the paperwork to you in like 5 minutes. You can do it now or you can do it tomorrow. I don't care, but I can get this together. She goes back in and sells Lecter on this deal, which would be a transfer, and that the senator's ready to do if they find her daughter alive, Catherine. If they find Catherine alive, like they can transfer him out, and he'll be a big help. So he agrees to help her, and he already knows who the killer is. Through all of these little conversations when Lecter's by himself, he goes through these little flashbacks of who Buffalo Bill is. Buffalo Bill, his whole backstory is he was given up by his mother and lived with his grandparents when he was little. Sometime in his teens. It doesn't say when in his teens, just as in his teens. He killed both his grandmother and his grandfather and was sent to jail. And when he was sent to jail, he was in and out of jail a lot. But while he was in jail, he was taught how to sew as a part of a rehabilitation program. When he left jail and he started on his regular life, he got a job helping this older lady make jewelry out of butterfly wings, moth wings, type of jewelry, as well as some tailoring and sewing. And during this time, he met Raspail, which was Hannibal Lecter's last patient. Was it his last? I believe it was one of his last patients. He met Raspail. They got together. They started becoming a couple. They started living together and everything. And then Raspail was complaining to Hannibal Lecter about how needy this guy was, how he was like, I know he killed his grandparents and he's very attracted to him, but he's not. He's getting kind of too clingy for him. And then Raspail meets Klaus. Klaus is from, I want to say, Germany. But he came over. He's from Europe. He came over. He's gorgeous. Raspail starts to fall into love with him. He's super, super great. He breaks up with Buffalo Bill. I can't remember his name now. James, yeah, James Gum. He breaks up with him, brings Klaus into his house, and they start having their affair. What Gum does is he kills Klaus, skins him to make a apron, and cuts his head off. And when Raspail comes back to his house after, his day out, he came back in and Gum is like, do I look better now? Do you want me now? Are you attracted to me now? And Raspail says, yes, I do. I do want you now. You are attracted to me now. And he's telling Lecter all of this. And Lecter and James Gum, they meet, they're introduced by Raspail and everything. Raspail even says that Lecter is one of the only people who is not afraid of Gum. And so while they're meeting with that and everything, and Hannibal Lecter, he's the one who kills Raspail after him and Gum are fully they're done. And so he kills him for being terrible at playing the flute. Pretty sure that one was it. It starts to blend together with his patients and his victims, because a lot of his victims were partial patients. They all started ending up there. That's why he was just drawing all of his records and everything. But so he knows who this guy is. He knows probably where he lives. He knows, no, he does know where he lived because Raspail brought it up. He told him where this older woman lived. She's like, he loves him. She's going to leave him all of her stuff when she dies. And she did. So he knows where he lives. He knows his name. He knows a few of his aliases. And he knows the psychology of this guy. So after they make the deal and Clarice leaves, he's like, all right. He's like, I'm going to tell her. But how to tell her within the right time that she can figure out who it is and thinks that she did it and I didn't tell her. And turns out that the guy who's running the place, Dr. Chilton, was recording the conversation because he was worried that Clarice was going to try and use the death of Miggs as some type of lawsuit against him. So he's recording the conversation, listens to it, and tells Lecter that the deal is fake. He's like, I called the senator's office. I talked to them. There is no deal. It's like, she played you. Like they played you, everything. But Chilton's like, I can get you a deal. I talked to the senator's office. There's a deal that can be made, except I need to have full cooperation. I need to have a profile under my name that you're going to give to them. Everything will be credited to me. And so Lecter tells him that he'll accept that. He'll do that. However, he has to be in person, meet the senator in person. So they go. He's going to be transferred. Crawford finds out that he's going to be transferred because he's being yelled at by his boss. Him and Clarice are both being yelled at. They're both being told that this is their fault. They fumbled. This is terrible. They're both being taken off of the case. It's going to be handed to somebody else, and that's going to be it. They're done. As they're leaving, Clarice is getting heated. She's like, I hate Chilton. I hate everything he's doing right here. He's like, he's killing this girl. And Hannibal Lecter is told the senator a name. She is given a name, or he has given a name to the senator of a person. It's not Jane Gum, but he's given her a name, and he's taunting her a little bit. And he is, in his internal monologue, he is excited because he's like, police officers, correction officers, they use handcuffs. They don't use restraints like the asylum does. So he's excited about that. And he gives her a name, tells her they have to hurry because Crawford and Starling, the FBI fumbled it, and they're gonna get her daughter killed. So she and the FBI, everybody that's there working with her, go to find out who this guy is. Gives them a description of exactly the right description, just a different name. And then he is in this cell type thing, and he is there. While he's in this cell, Clarice comes to visit him. She bribes Barney not bribes. She tells Barney to give her all of Lecter's paintings, all of his drawings that were taken out of his cell. She's like, it's the least you could do for, giving me a school desk that was bugged. So he does. Gives that to her. She travels to where Lecter is and visits him in his cell. She's trying to tell him, she's like, you were telling me the truth the last time we talked. She's like, I need you to tell me who this person is. And he wants the rest of her backstory, and she gives it to him. She tells him, like, she was woken up by the screaming of the lambs because they were doing the slaughtering of the lambs, and she was trying to get them to escape. They wouldn't, so she grabs her horse and she runs. And she leaves. And while she's telling him the backstory, he's telling her that everything she needs to know is in the case files. Like, have you read it? You should be able to figure this out. And she's trying to get him to tell her the name, and he gives her the case files. She's getting caught out that she's not supposed to be there. She's escorted out, and Lecter is there. He's being given his dinner. He tells the corrections officers that, I just give me 1 minute and we'll use the toilet. While he's in his only little, behind his paper screen, which is the only privacy he gets in this cell, he has a metal tube up in his mouth that he takes out, and there's a paper clip type thing in there. And he hides that in his palm because Hannibal Lecter on his right hand has 6 fingers. So he knows the person who's going to be putting handcuffs on him is going to be staring at his right hand. So he puts it in his left hand. So when they tell him to put his hands behind his back, scoot down, get down on the floor, scoot back till his hands are through the bars so they can handcuff him, open up his cell, bring him dinner. He's like, okay, he does that. The guy's looking at his right hand, doesn't notice his left hand is not fully open. They handcuff him. While they handcuff him, they're bringing in his lunch, and he easily picks the handcuffs, super easy. It was like one sentence in the book. So when they're coming in, he slaps the handcuffs on one of the corrections officers and pulls him in. He knocks out the other one. It takes 5 hits to kill this guy. Like the book is very specific. It takes 5 well-placed hits to kill this one officer, and then he goes to the other one, pours pepper spray in his eyes, and while the guy is writhing around trying to leave and trying to figure out a way out, Lecter goes to where the desk is that they sit at, opens up the desk, finds a knife, and he kills the other guard. And the police all around this area where he's at, it's a courthouse, they're freaking out about shots being fired. And so they go up to where Lecter was. They see a body on display on the cage where he was at, and then another one that looks severely beaten on the ground. They're freaking out. They're trying to find Lecter. They're like, all right, we need to seal off the whole 10 blocks perimeter around this area. We need to have SWAT here. We need to have every cop on alert. And then they notice the guy on the ground is breathing. And when he's breathing, they're like, all right, we need to get this guy stable, talk to him, keep him awake. We're trying to figure out, while they're doing a sweep of all of the floors. And the ambulance is on their way to get this guy. They take him down, put him in the ambulance, and then they notice that there's blood seeping through the top of the elevator. So they're like, he's up there, okay. They surround the area. They're trying to figure out what's going on. They look in it and they see it's a body wrapped in a mattress. And when they open up the little trapdoor thing, they realize that it is not Lecter. And Lecter has cut off the face of one of the correctional officers, put on his uniform, and used that face and bits. The book just says bits from the other officer as well to cover up his face. He's partially scalped, so it looks like his hair is there. He's matted down with blood. He does like blood bubbles with it and everything. And they said that he called the ambulance while this was happening so the ambulance would show up faster so he wouldn't have to wait. And he was already taken out in the ambulance. He kills the ambulance driver and the person who was working on him, stashes the ambulance, kills a tourist, steals his clothes and his car, and then drops the car off at the airport. And so he's gone. He escaped. And Crawford is telling Clarice that Hannibal escaped from where he was kept. And he's like kind of freaking out, telling her like, you need to be safe and everything. And she's just like, I don't think that he'll come after me. She's like, I think that I intrigue him too much. And so Crawford's telling her like, well, as soon as that stops, he'll probably kill you. But she's like, he won't come here now. Like, he's not a priority. And that's when they're called into the big boss's office to be yelled at. Crawford's like, you just need to go back to school. You need to go back to the academy. If you don't go back, you're going to be washed out. He's like, I can guarantee you a spot, but it might be 6 months. It might be a year from now. You just need to go back, forget all of this happened. She's telling him, no, you brought me into this. I'm going to see it through. If you didn't want me to be here, you wouldn't have sent me to go do forensics on that girl. Like, she's like, I'm here. I'm going to stay. We need help. And so she tells him that she needs to go back to the victims. She needs to go see the victims, where they lived, what their lives were like, and find a connection. And he's trying to talk her out of it, but she's like, I'm going to do this. She's like, this is what I can do. She's like, I can tell more of what's going on with them in their lives from what I see of their rooms and everything than any male who's ever been there, any police guy who's ever been there. So she's also using information that Lecter had given her that she kind of worked her way through a lot. So she's like, okay. She's like, I need to do this. So he's like, all right. He's like, here's some, go do that here. If you find anything, let me know, put it on the wire. They have this whole system that goes out to everybody. There's like a whole tech person that does this for them. And so she goes and she starts looking at the victims. She starts with the first one. She does just regular type of police work of going through all of her stuff. She finds out that this person loved to sew. She really enjoyed to sew. She had parents she had a father that was there. She had a best friend, and her best friend was talking about where she lived, what she did. She didn't have a boyfriend. She wasn't seeing anybody, but she did a lot of work with some of these people. She's just going through, this person's history, her backstory, her not confidants, her connections through everybody else. And as she's going through that, they're trying to find the name that Lecter gave the senator, everything. They find a name, they find connections somewhere in Chicago. She wants to go there, but she can't. She calls everybody and they're trying to update all of the names. She gives them, she's like, I figured out why he's doing this. He's trying to make a suit. Lecter was right. He's making a woman suit. They tell her on this line that they already have a name and they're doing the investigation. She's told she needs to continue doing what she's doing to make sure that all loose ends are tied up. So she's just going through her process of elimination through these not coincidences, not friends, not consequences. And during this time, at the beginning towards more of the beginning of the investigation within the book, after they find the severed head and they get some information from Lecter, kind of this guy's going through a transformation, what Drac Crawford does is he calls all of the major hospitals that do sex reassignment surgery and gives them a very specific thing to look out for. They give him pushback, bureaucracy type thing, and he tells them kind of like, what would the publicity be if it's found out that this guy is associated with your hospitals? Kind of threatening, kind of not. And so they start like, okay, we're gonna look at this, we'll get back to you. And at this point, after Lecter's gone, he fully escaped, and the people in Tennessee are looking for this fake name. He gets a call back from one of these hospitals, and they tell him, yeah, you were spot on. There was this guy here, and he matched every single thing you said. And his name was, they found out it was James Gum. Like, after he lied on the background, he would have never passed psych. After some digging, we found out his name was James Gum, and this is the address he gave. But that also could be a lie, like the name he gave. So Crawford leaves where he was at and goes to find this house. And he tells Clarice, but she's finding witnesses and trying to track down what these people, how these people were acquainted with James Gum, that he picked them. And so she's doing that. Crawford tells her to keep doing that while he's trying to find this one. And so she's doing that. She finds James Gum's house. She doesn't know it's James Gum. She's trying to find who this older lady was that James Gubbs worked for, if there's any family members, lawyers, anything like that. James Gubbs is like, I have, her lawyer's information, or I think her son. I think she had a son. I have that information on a card. Let me find that for you. Clarice is like, great, thank you. While he's digging around, she's just looking around the house, and just out of nowhere, it seems like one of the moths that was found in the throat of all the victims shows up and is crawling up James Gunn's back, and the wings split open right between his shoulder blades, and that's when Clarice makes all the connections of, this is our guy, this is him, this is Buffalo Bill. And so he turns around, he's like, all right, here's the card, and he sees that, when he turns around, he sees the moth that was on his back flutter away. He notices she's not looking at it, so he knows that she knows who he is. So she pulls out her weapon. She's telling him to put his hands up in the air, don't move. But he turns around and runs. And remembering her training, she's like, I can't shoot this guy in the back. If he had a weapon or was going for a weapon, I could have shot him. But he didn't, so I can't. And he runs. He goes into the basement and closes the door, everything. She runs into the kitchen, notices there's this kind of hole in the kitchen, looks down, and it's just black down there. And so she finds the basement. She runs into the basement, finds a well. That's where he's keeping Catherine. That's where he keeps his victims. There's a well underneath the kitchen, and so she goes under there. She finds Catherine's there. She's telling her she's going to be fine. FBI, she needs to find this guy. And so she's going around into the basement and trying to find him. The lights turn out, and she's freaking out. It's dark in there. She has her weapon out, and she's trying to find a wall, trying to find him. So she's staying close to the wall, using her hands to feel. One hand to feel where she's going, and one hand on her weapon. And through this, James Gunn has night vision goggles on, and he's watching her kind of stumble around. And he's looking at her. He's like, she's too small to use in his project. She's like, but her hair is gorgeous. So he's thinking about trying to keep her hair intact. Maybe it'll fit, but most likely not. And then what a waste. So he takes out his gun and he cocks it. But when he cocks it, she hears it because there's no other sounds in there. It's pitch black. She hears the sound. She swings around and starts firing. He fires, and she fires 4 shots and hits him 4 times. And she can hear him gasping and wheezing. He's shocked that he's dying. And he's like, no, I can't go yet. But he dies. And she was grazed on the cheek. And so she kills him. It flips back to her at the FBI headquarters with Crawford. And Crawford's just telling, they're debriefing on what happened, what's going on. And they tell her that if she can do all of her exams and do some catch-up work, she can stay in the academy if she can catch up. And they're going to let her catch up if she can do it. And she's like, okay. And just like with the first book, this book's ending doesn't end on a satisfying note. The movie did a really good job on giving it more of a happy ending, because in the movie, it shows back at Quantico and she's getting her FBI badge, and she's like, yep, she's graduating. And then Lecter calls her on the phone and tells her this little spiel, and Lecter is hunting down Chilton, and it's heavily implied that he's gonna kill him. Like he's there, he finds him, he's kind of slowly following after him, and that's where the scene fades out and the movie ends. And you're like, yeah, Chilton deserves something. Like, he's such a terrible person. And the book, they tell her she can catch up. And Jack Crawford's wife is passed. And Hannibal Lecter is, he writes her a letter. He doesn't call, or I think he calls. I don't remember if it was a letter or if it was a phone call, but he says the same thing that he says in the movie, and except he's not in a different country hunting down Chilton. He is by a hospital that specializes in plastic surgery and altering his appearance, not through plastic surgery because they would recognize him and turn him in, but altering enough with what he can do in a hotel room, covered in like, because he can cover himself in bandages and it's not out of place. And then he's going to go to a different country to get plastic surgery so he can move about freely. And that's where the book ends. So overall, very good stories. The first one it surprises me with how little he's in there. He kind of steals the show. Like, you still have the other two main characters, Graham and Dollarhide, and how they're going through all of the things. Their whole story is really great. But even through that, Lecter kind of steals the show. In the second one, they gave him the spotlight that worked really well. And these are both great books. I was super happy to have read them, and I got to listen to them, and it was great. I'm definitely excited that I have the physical copy of at least Red Dragon. I surprisingly do not have the physical copy of Silence of the Lambs, but I'll be getting that. Yeah, that'll be one of the things I get when I start buying books again. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and discussing these books. Obviously, I gave these books both 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the writing. I enjoyed all of it. Both of these, I'm super excited to say, were 5 stars for me. I will definitely be reading them again. And I put them both as 5 stars in the reading journal. So thank you guys for joining me. You guys are amazing and awesome, and I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Don't forget to like, subscribe. You'll be able to see all of these videos that we have going on. Finishing more books that we can add to the reading journal, and I should be having a more regular schedule coming up now that my jaw is not swollen and can kind of get a regular schedule going. But you can always be a part of my Patreon. My Patreons get to see the videos 1 week earlier than they go public, and you can also join me on Twitch. I stream video games every Sunday and throughout the week when I have time, and my Discord is where I'm at most of the time when I'm online and at home. You can also, all of the links and everything are down below in the description. Thank you guys so much for joining. I hope you guys have an amazing time, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye bye.